Why some inmates never leave ADX Florence, even after sentencing ends. The door they were never supposed to open. Before we dive into this one, hit that subscribe button if you're brave enough. Because tonight's story goes deeper than any prison wall, deeper than any secret the government ever meant for the public to hear. Let's begin. The storm hit Florence, Colorado, just after midnight, sweeping dark clouds across the razor-wire perimeter of the nation's most fortified prison, ADX Florence. The concrete giant sat silent, as it always did, like a tomb built for the living. But inside, something stirred that would shatter the illusion of order. It began with a single alarm, a low, vibrating buzz that echoed through the special security unit, a wing reserved for inmates considered too dangerous for the general population. Men who had burned through every disciplinary sentence, every privilege, every chance. Men the public assumed had been locked away and forgotten. But on this night, one of them, inmate 2048A, real name Marcus Hale, was missing. Not escaped. Not transferred. Missing. His cell door was sealed. The cameras showed no movement. His food slot hadn't been opened. Yet the man himself, a former organized crime strategist with a reputation for psychological manipulation, had vanished into thin air. The first officers on the scene thought it was an equipment glitch. ADX Florence had no tolerance for magic, illusions, or human error. Everything was documented, triple-checked, and cross-verified. But the deeper they searched, the stranger it became. Inside Marcus Hale's cell, the bed was made military-tight. The stainless steel sink gleamed. His jumpsuit hung neatly on its hook. And on the concrete floor, perfectly centered, was a folded slip of blue paper. Contraband. Impossible to obtain. On it, in blocky handwriting, he was right about the basement. The officers exchanged uneasy glances. ADX Florence didn't have a basement. Not one listed in any blueprint. Not one reported to any oversight agency. Not one mentioned in the decades of public hearings, lawsuits, or reform reports. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Within the hour, FBI Special Investigator Diane Mercer was flown in under urgent order. Mercer had spent years auditing high-security facilities and was known for spotting lies before they were spoken. She was sharp, composed, and not easily rattled. But the moment she stepped into the empty cell, her jaw tightened. This wasn't an escape, she muttered. This was a removal. She lifted the blue slip of paper with gloved hands, her eyes narrowing at the edges of the handwriting. It was calm, controlled, almost rehearsed. She turned to the warden. "Tell me about the basement." He didn't answer. Instead, he exhaled, long, heavy, defeated. "Follow me." The walk was silent except for the distant hum of fluorescent lights. They moved through checkpoints that hadn't been opened in years. Gates that required physical keys instead of keycards. Doors thick enough to withstand explosives. Finally, the warden stopped at a narrow utility corridor. A rusted steel hatch sat at the end, half hidden behind a stack of unused cleaning crates. "This isn't on any map," Mercer said. "It's not supposed to be," the warden replied. With a groaning metallic scrape, he unlocked the hatch. Cold air rushed out, stale, heavy, untouched for years. Mercer's flashlight sliced through the darkness, revealing concrete steps descending into a narrow shaft. She moved forward. 1 step, 2 steps, 3. Then her light hit something. A second door. Heavy. Reinforced. And on its surface, dozens of deep scratches, as though someone had clawed at it from the inside. She froze. What happened down here? The warden swallowed hard. This is why some inmates never leave, even after their sentences end. Mercer raised her light again, and then she saw it, carved into the metal in jagged strokes. Hale wasn't the first. Her breath caught, and the lock on the door was open. The walls that remember. The reinforced door stood slightly ajar, as if someone had opened it in a hurry, or fled through it. Investigator Diane Mercer tightened her grip on her flashlight, the beam trembling just enough to betray the tension under her calm exterior. The warden hovered behind her, shoulders rigid, eyes fixed on the concrete floor. Mercer pushed the door fully open. Cold air spilled out like a buried breath. The room beyond was narrow and long, with walls of unfinished concrete and a ceiling so low she could touch it if she reached up. A faint blue security light flickered overhead, casting the corridor in an eerie, underwater glow. This wasn't a basement. This was a holding block, older than the prison itself. And someone had lived in it. Metal restraints hung from the walls. A small drain sat in the center of the floor. A cracked plexiglass observation window, long fogged over, occupied the far wall. The room felt forgotten, abandoned by design, as if its purpose had been erased from every report and every inspection that ever stepped foot in ADX. Mercer turned slowly. How long has this existed? The warden didn't move. It predates my administration. Who built it? There was no answer. Mercer walked deeper into the room, narrowing her eyes at the marks on the walls, deep, purposeful lines carved by someone determined not to disappear quietly. The etchings formed patterns, almost symbols, interrupted by jagged scratches where the concrete had worn away. But one carving stood out. A single name, M. Hale. And beneath it, a date. 12 years ago. Marcus Hale had been at ADX for only 6. Mercer inhaled sharply. This can't be right. He wasn't even incarcerated back then. The warden looked away. I told you. Hale wasn't the first. Before she could demand clarification, a faint hum vibrated beneath her feet. She crouched, placing her fingertips on the concrete. The pulse was rhythmic, mechanical, like machinery operating somewhere below the floor. There's something under here, she whispered. And that's when the lights went out. Total darkness swallowed the corridor. The hum stopped. For a moment, Mercer heard only her own heartbeat. Then a faint shuffle. Behind her, she spun around, flashlight beam ripping through the darkness. Nothing. Warden, she said sharply. No response. Her beam scanned the narrow basement hallway. The warden was gone. Her stomach dropped. There was no way he passed her. No way he slipped by without the light catching his movement. And the door, the heavy door they'd entered through, was now closed, locked. Mercer's pulse surged. She rushed to the door, pulling hard, but the steel didn't budge. Then she saw something impossible. There, on the floor in front of the door, lay a fresh slip of folded blue paper, just like the one found in Hale's cell. Her hand hovered before she picked it up with trembling fingers. A single sentence filled the page. He followed them. So will you. Mercer's throat tightened. Them? Who were them? Her flashlight flickered. She turned and froze. A second room, one she hadn't noticed in the corner, now had its lights on. Faint, cold, bluish-white. The door was cracked open just an inch. Inside, something cast a shadow across the floor. Not a person, a shape, a metal chair, bolted to the ground, and strapped into it. A bundle of restraints still buckled tight, as if someone had been removed only moments before she arrived. Mercer's breath trembled. Marcus Hale, she whispered. Where did they take you? Before she could step forward, her radio hissed to life, blasting static, so loud it echoed off the concrete walls. Then a distorted voice forced its way through. Agent Mercer, do not go further. Repeat, do not go. The message cut abruptly, replaced by another faint hum. Lower, closer, beneath her feet. Something was activating again. And then, from somewhere deeper inside the hidden block, a new sound rose. Footsteps. Slow, steady, coming straight toward her. The inmate who never left. The footsteps grew louder, each one echoing off the concrete walls with a deliberate, unsettling rhythm. Investigator Diane Mercer backed toward the wall, flashlight beam trembling across the narrow corridor. Her breath turned sharp, shallow. In a place like ADX Florence, footsteps that slow meant only one thing. Someone wasn't afraid of her. But when the figure finally stepped into view, the beam of her flashlight revealed not a person, but an empty hallway. The footsteps had stopped. Completely. Mercer steadied her breathing, forcing her pulse to slow. Get a grip, she whispered. Sound travels weird down here. But even she didn't believe her own reassurance. She moved back toward the second room, the one with the metal chair bolted to the ground. The faint blue light inside flickered like an old fluorescent bulb struggling to survive. As she approached the doorway, her radio crackled again, this time with total clarity. "Agent Mercer, are you underground?" The voice belonged to Deputy Director Raymond Holt, her supervisor at the bureau. He should have been hundreds of miles away. Mercer pressed the transmit button. "I'm in an unlisted sublevel. The warden was with me, but he's gone. I repeat, he's gone. The door sealed behind us. I found restraints, carvings, something older than the prison." But the moment she said older than the prison, the radio cut off completely. No static, just silence. Then a faint scrape. From inside the room, Mercer swung the beam into the chamber, illuminating the chair, the peeling walls, the metal floor. And there, on the far side, something caught the light. A vent grate, freshly unscrewed. Someone had crawled through. She crouched, examining the screws carefully placed beside the opening. Whoever did this wasn't rushed. They had time. They had a plan. Her mind spun. Hale couldn't have done this. He'd been in solitary when he vanished from his cell. Every movement monitored. Every second logged. He was either moved or someone wanted it to look like he escaped. Her eyes drifted back to the chair. A faint blue residue coated the restraints. Powdery, like detergent dust or fabric dye. Her stomach sank. That same residue had been on Hale's blanket the day he disappeared. She stood quickly. "He wasn't taken from his cell," she whispered. "He was taken from here." A low creak echoed from the hallway beyond. She stepped out of the chamber, light darting across the concrete. The hum beneath her feet pulsed again, this time stronger, closer. Then the wall, to her left, vibrated. Just once. A soft thud, as if someone pushed from the other side. Mercer pressed her palm to the cold concrete. "Hello." No response. She knocked twice. Silence. Then, 2 knocks answered. Her breath caught in her throat. She stepped back slowly. There was no doubt now. Someone was behind that wall. Someone alive. And then, suddenly, a metallic click echoed from behind her. She spun. The second door at the end of the corridor, previously shut, was now open. Just a few inches. Just enough for someone to slide through. The flashlight beam trembled as she approached. "You're not doing this alone," she muttered to herself, keeping her radio close even though it had died moments earlier. She reached the door and nudged it with her boot. It swung wider. Inside was a room empty, except for a small metal desk bolted to the floor. A stack of old case files sat neatly arranged in the center. Files that looked untouched for years. Her eyes drifted down and froze. There, on top, was a photo. A grainy, black and white intake picture. Marcus Hale. But not the mugshot she knew. This one was older. Much older. The date stamped on it made her skin prickle. 10 years before his official arrest. And beneath the photo, a label written in faded ink. Inmate 0, special hold. Mercer's pulse thundered in her ears. Inmate 0. Not a number. A designation. And someone at ADX wanted to keep it buried. Before she could dig deeper, the lights flickered violently and went out completely, drowning the hidden wing in total darkness. Then, a voice whispered behind her. Low, calm, close enough for her to feel the breath against her ear. "You're not supposed to be here." The man who shouldn't exist. Diane Mercer didn't move. Every muscle in her body froze the instant she heard the whisper drift across the darkness. It didn't echo. It didn't bounce off the walls like every other sound in that underground wing. It came from right behind her. She forced herself to turn slowly, flashlight trembling in her hand. The beam flickered to life, just long enough to slice a thin arc across the corridor. But no one was there. Her heart hammered in her chest. She spun again, sweeping the light across the concrete floor, the corners, the ceilings. Nothing. No footsteps. No breathing. No shadow that didn't belong. But the voice was real. She backed out of the file room, keeping her light pointed straight ahead. The hum beneath the floor began again, deep, mechanical, pulsing like the heartbeat of some hidden machine waking up. Then the corridor lights flickered back on. Dim, blue, cold. And suddenly, the once empty hallway was different. Someone had placed something right in the middle of the concrete floor. An old, rusted keyring. Mercer knelt, inspecting it. 2 keys. Heavy. Industrial. Not the kind used anywhere in the modern prison. These were older, mid-century, maybe earlier. She lifted them carefully, the cold metal biting against her gloves. A faint engraving caught her eye on the larger key. B12. She whispered to herself. Block 12 isn't on any map. Before she could decide her next move, her radio burst back to life with a loud, ear-splitting shriek of static. She ripped it away from her ear, wincing as the sound pierced the underground silence. Then, buried beneath the static, she heard it. Get out. Mercer, not safe, they're moving him. The voice was unmistakable. Deputy Director Holt. And he sounded terrified. Who is moving him? Mercer shouted into the radio. Who? Who else knew about these levels? But the radio clicked off. She exhaled shakily. There was no going back the way she came. The main door remained sealed, locked by someone or something, controlling this place from above or below. She looked down at the keys. There was only one path left. She walked deeper into the hidden wing, following the faint vibration humming beneath the concrete. The hall narrowed, the ceiling dipping lower. Pipes lined the walls, some rusty, some new, some disconnected or hastily welded. She finally reached a steel door, half hidden behind a jutting pipe. The number 12 was stenciled faintly across its surface in peeling black paint. She lifted the key. It slid into the lock with unsettling ease. The door groaned open. A wave of cold air rolled out, carrying with it a metallic scent, sterile, old, and strangely familiar. Mercer stepped inside, flashlight cutting through the darkness. Her breath caught. This was no cell block. This was a facility inside the facility. Rows of observation rooms lined the corridor, each with a thick glass window. Inside each room were old examination tables, empty metal restraint chairs, and rusted medical cabinets. The walls had peeling paint and dark stains she didn't want to identify. A hospital wing, or something pretending to be one. Her flashlight revealed more. Charts, files, medical logs pinned to clipboards on each door. Names scribbled out, dates missing, entire sections blacked out with heavy ink. And on the final door, one file remained untouched. Mercer reached for it, her fingers trembling slightly. Hail Marcus, special hold. Her throat tightened as she flipped it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a timeline, one that listed Hale's intake date not as 6 years ago, but as 20 years earlier. 12 years of unaccounted time. 12 years erased. Her mind reeled. None of it made sense. Hale would have been a teenager. There were no arrest records, no charges, nothing to explain this. Unless he was never a criminal. Unless he was something else entirely. As she turned the page, a shadow moved behind the glass of the observation room across from her. She froze, holding her breath. The figure stepped forward slowly, shape becoming clear through the blue tint. Tall, thin, head bowed. A man. He lifted his face. And she recognized him instantly. Marcus Hale. Alive. Standing. Watching her. But something was wrong. His eyes weren't pleading or afraid. They were calm. Almost resigned. He raised one hand and placed it against the glass. Then his lips moved. She couldn't hear the words, but she could read them. They're coming. The overhead lights snapped off. A loud metallic slam echoed at the end of the hallway, and the entire corridor filled with the unmistakable sound of boots rushing toward her. Fast. Many of them. She spun toward Hale. But he was gone. The window now reflected only her own terrified face. The door that should never open. Diane Mercer didn't run at first. She listened. Boots thundered down the hidden hallway, dozens of them, synchronized and fast, too fast for standard correctional response teams. These men weren't coming to secure an inmate or assist an agent. They were coming to contain something. Or someone. and Mercer was standing in the middle of their kill zone. She spun toward the observation window where Marcus Hale had stood just seconds earlier. The glass reflected only the dim blue corridor light and the tremble of her own breath. No door opened. No footsteps retreated. Hale had simply vanished, just like every record of his past. Her heartbeat slammed against her ribs. She grabbed the unmarked file and took one last look at the timeline, the date scribbles, the special hold designation. None of it made sense. None of it added up. Unless ADX Florence had been holding more than criminals. Unless the reason some inmates never left was because they were never meant to. The boots grew louder. Mercer turned and sprinted down the corridor, passing door after door of abandoned medical rooms. Her flashlight beam shook violently, slicing across walls covered in peeling paint and decades-old stains. She reached the final door, the one she'd come through, and jammed the key into the lock. It didn't move. She twisted harder. Nothing. Then she noticed the truth. The lock wasn't broken. It was controlled electronically. Her stomach dropped. Someone was locking her inside. She spun around, pressing her back to the cold steel door. Flashlight pointed toward the oncoming footsteps. Her mind raced. There had to be another exit. There had to be a vent, just like the one Hale had escaped through in the previous room. She ran back down the hall and skidded into the chamber with the cut vent grate. The opening was small, but she could fit if she angled her shoulders. She slung her radio off her belt, hitting transmit even though she knew it wouldn't work. Mercer to any unit. I am trapped in an unlisted sublevel. Repeat, trapped. There are armed men approaching. Static responded. No one was coming. She shoved the flashlight into her mouth, gripping it between her teeth, pulled herself into the vent, and crawled as fast as she could. The metal scraped her elbows. Dust stung her eyes. She kept crawling, moving toward a faint draft ahead. Then, voices. 2 men. Close. Secure the wing. The warden says Mercer saw Hale. Then she can't leave. You know the protocol. Her body froze. They were right beneath her. Another voice joined them, one she recognized instantly. Deputy Director Holt. She's good, Holt said quietly. But she doesn't know what Hale really is. We have to contain this. Mercer's breath nearly stopped. Her own superior. Behind the entire cover-up. Another man spoke. Sir, once we recover Hale, what then? A pause. Then Holt's answer came cold and steady. We finish what was started 20 years ago. Mercer's pulse roared in her ears. She resumed crawling, faster now, driven by adrenaline and betrayal. The vent sloped downward sharply, and before she could brace herself, the metal beneath her gave way. She slid, tumbling through darkness, crashing onto a concrete floor below. Pain shot through her shoulder. She groaned, rolling onto her back. Her flashlight flickered beside her. Then she saw it. A door. Not steel. Not modern. An ancient wooden door sealed with iron bands. Engraved across the front. C0. Her breath caught in her throat. C0. Cell 0. The first. The reason ADX Florence had a basement older than the prison. The reason records were missing. The reason Hale didn't exist on paper until 6 years ago. She reached for the door. Behind her, boots hit the ground. The men had found where she fell. She had seconds. She pressed her palm against the wood. The door clicked, swung open. Cold, blue-tinged air poured out, thick with dust and the scent of metal. Inside the dark room stood a single restraint chair. Not rusted, not abandoned, used recently. And standing beside it, his silhouette barely visible, was Marcus Hale. His eyes met hers. Calm, knowing. Agent Mercer, he said softly. You shouldn't have come. Why are you here? She whispered. Why won't they let you leave? He stepped closer, voice low. Because I know what this place was built for. And now so do you. Shouts erupted behind her. Flashlights. Boots. Weapons. Hale looked past her toward the approaching officers. You don't have much time. What do I do? She asked, breath shaking. Hale's expression darkened, not threatening, not violent, but resigned. Haunted. You run. and you tell the world why some inmates never leave this place. The boots were seconds away. Hale gave one last whisper. They'll never let me leave. But they might let you. The lights exploded to full brightness. White, blinding, burning. Mercer shielded her eyes. When her vision cleared, Hale was gone. Again. And the door behind her slammed shut, sealing her out, leaving only the cold hallway and the sound of boots closing in. She ran. She didn't look back. Final line, haunting ending. 3 months later, ADX Florence quietly announced the transfer of an unidentified inmate to a classified location. No records. No photos. No confirmation. But on the same day, Diane Mercer received a single blue slip of paper in the mail. Cell 0 is open. If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for the next one.